The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, interrupting Ambassador Chen's coffee ritual aboard the United Earth Embassy station. The holographic display flickered to life, showing symbols that the translation matrix struggled to decode. After several seconds, the words materialized in crisp English text. The hegemony comes. You have 7 of your solar rotations. Chen set down her cup with steady hands, though her heart raced. She'd been expecting something like this for months. The whispers in the galactic corridors, the sudden withdrawal of several species ambassadors, the mysterious sensor blackouts in distant sectors, all signs pointed to something big approaching. "Maria, get me Admiral Rodriguez and the Security Council," she called to her assistant. "Priority 1. The space around Earth had changed dramatically in the 50 years since first contact. Where once only human satellites and stations orbited, now a bustling international, or rather interstellar community thrived. The orbital ring, humanity's proudest achievement, gleamed like a silver bracelet around Earth's equator. Ships from a dozen species docked at its ports, trading goods and knowledge. But Earth's position in the galactic community remained precarious. Humans were newcomers, barely out of their stellar cradle. Most species viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and condescension, like watching clever children play with tools they didn't fully understand. Admiral Rodriguez appeared on Chen's screen within minutes, his weathered face grim. "I've seen the message. We're mobilizing everything we have." Everything we have wasn't much by galactic standards. Earth's fleet consisted of 47 combat vessels, most retrofitted from mining ships and exploratory craft. The newest, the UES Resilience, had rolled out of the Luna shipyards just 6 months ago. Against the hegemony, a coalition of conquest that had subjugated 30 systems, it would be like bringing knives to a plasma cannon fight. "We need allies," Chen said. "I'm calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council." Rodriguez nodded. "Do what you can diplomatically. I'll prepare for the worst." The Galactic Council convened in the neutral territory of Kepler Station, a massive structure that floated in the void between stars. Representatives from 93 spacefaring civilizations gathered in the great amphitheater, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. The Altarians floated in their water-filled environmental suits, the crystalline Vega hummed with harmonic frequencies, and the insectoid hunters clicked their mandibles in what passed for nervous conversation. Chen stood at the speaker's podium, feeling very small and very young, both as an individual and as a representative of her species. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying through the universal translators. "Earth has received a direct threat from the hegemony. They arrive in 7 days." A ripple of reaction passed through the assembly. Some representatives turned away, a gesture of dismissal. Others leaned forward with interest. Most remained carefully neutral. The Altarian ambassador spoke first, her melodious voice carrying through the water of her suit. "Earth is not a full member of this council. You have no defensive pacts, no guaranteed protections. Why should we risk the hegemony's wrath for a species that has barely achieved faster-than-light travel?" It was the response Chen had expected. Earth had been denied full membership 3 times, always for the same reasons: too young, too volatile, too unpredictable. Humans had a reputation for rushing into situations, for taking risks that other species considered insane. "Because," Chen said, straightening her shoulders, "those who stand with Earth gain allies who never yield." The Hunter ambassador chittered what their translator interpreted as laughter. Bold words from a species facing annihilation. What can Earth offer that the hegemony cannot simply take? Chen had prepared for this moment. She touched her wrist device, and a holographic display materialized above the assembly. 3 years ago, the mining colony on Proxima B was attacked by raiders. The Centauri government wrote it off as lost, pulling back their defense forces to protect more valuable assets. The display showed footage of the attack, ships firing on the defenseless colony. Earth sent a single frigate, the UES Defiant, knowing it was outgunned 3-1. The footage continued, showing the Defiant positioning itself between the raiders and the colony, taking hit after hit while evacuation ships fled. The Defiant was destroyed, Chen continued, but not before every single colonist, Centauri, human, and Rigelian, was evacuated to safety. 42 humans died to save 600 beings, most of whom weren't even our own species. She changed the display. Last year, when the Vega 5 research station suffered a cascade failure in their reactor system, human engineers volunteered to enter the radioactive core to prevent a meltdown. The radiation levels were lethal to human physiology within minutes. They knew this. They went anyway. The crystalline forms of the Vega delegation pulsed with what Chen had learned indicated deep emotion. 18 months ago, when plague struck the Altarian colony on New Tethys, human medical teams arrived with experimental treatments. The disease was unknown to us, the treatments untested. Our doctors and researchers worked around the clock, many contracting the illness themselves. We lost 31 medical personnel. We saved 12,000 Altarian lives. The Altarian ambassador's fins fluttered, a sign of distress. Chen's voice hardened. You ask what Earth can offer? We offer the one thing the hegemony never will. We offer to stand beside you, no matter the cost. We offer to bleed for strangers, to die for principles, to never abandon those who call us friend. She paused, letting her words sink in. Yes, we are young. Yes, we are reckless by your standards. But we are also the species that will charge into a burning building to save someone we've never met, who will share our last breath of oxygen with a stranger, who will stand and fight when prudence says to run. The council chamber had gone silent. Even the ever-chattering merchants had stopped their constant commercial broadcasts. The hegemony conquers through fear, Chen continued. They count on species calculating the odds, measuring the cost, and choosing submission over destruction. They've never faced humans before. They've never faced a species that looks at impossible odds and says, "Bring it on." The hunter ambassador stood, their segmented body unfolding to its full 3-meter height. Pretty words, Ambassador Chen. But words won't stop hegemony dreadnoughts. No, Chen agreed, but actions might. Earth formally requests any aid the Council can provide, ships, weapons, intelligence, anything. But whether you help us or not, we will fight. We will make the hegemony pay for every inch of space, for every human life. And when they finally overwhelm us, because the numbers say they will, we'll make sure the galaxy remembers that Earth stood alone and still stood tall. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as anatomy allowed. The question is, when the histories are written, will they say you stood with us? The first to move was not who Chen expected. The quiet ones, a species so reclusive that some doubted they truly existed, shimmered into visibility near the back of the chamber. Their representative, a being of shifting shadows and whispered thoughts, spoke directly into every mind present. We have watched. We have measured. The humans speak truth. Their chaos brings change. Their recklessness brings courage. We will stand with Earth. The chamber erupted. The quiet ones had never taken a position on anything in the 50 cycles since they'd joined the Council. Their combat capabilities were unknown, but rumored to be formidable. The Vega harmonized next, their crystal bodies resonating with decision. The humans saved our children on Vega 5. We remember. We will stand with Earth. One by one, others began to speak. Not all. Many remained silent, calculating the odds of hegemony retaliation. But more stood than Chen had dared hope. The Rigelians, remembering Proxima B, a faction of the Hunters, admiring humanity's warrior spirit. Even some Altarians, swayed by the memory of human doctors dying to save their colonists. In the end, 12 species pledged support. It wasn't the full might of the Council, but it was more than Earth had ever had before. As the session concluded, the Altarian ambassador approached Chen. "You've gained allies today, but will it be enough?" Chen thought of Admiral Rodriguez and the 47 ships that comprised Earth's entire fleet. She thought of the billions of humans who would soon learn that war was coming to their doorstep. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But we'll make sure it matters." The journey back to Earth took 2 days through hyperspace. Chen spent the time coordinating with their new allies, establishing communication protocols and joint command structures. The quiet ones proved surprisingly helpful, providing intelligence on hegemony fleet movements and tactical preferences that their mysterious observation networks had gathered. She arrived at Earth to find a planet transformed. The news had broken while she was in transit, and humanity had responded as humanity always did, with a mixture of panic, determination, and stubborn refusal to go quietly into the night. The orbital shipyards worked around the clock, civilian craft being hastily retrofitted with weapons and shields. The ancient International Space Station, now a museum, had been recommissioned as a medical facility. On the surface, every nation had mobilized their militaries, even though ground forces would be useless in a space battle. But it was the civilian response that made Chen's throat tight with emotion. Volunteer lists for auxiliary positions, mechanics, medics, supply runners, had crashed government servers with the volume of applications. Children's drawings of Earth's defenders appeared on every street corner. Religious leaders from every faith called for unity and courage. Admiral Rodriguez met her at the command center. "Ambassador, how many ships?" "The Allied fleet will be modest," Chen admitted. "Perhaps 200 vessels total, but some are highly advanced. The quiet ones alone are sending 12 ships." Rodriguez's eyebrows rose. 12 doesn't sound like much. "Wait until you see them," Chen said. "What's our status?" "We'll have 53 combat-ready vessels by the time they arrive. Every civilian ship that can mount a weapon is being pressed into service. We might field another 100, though they'll be more targets than threats." Chen nodded. Against the hegemony's estimated 1,000-ship fleet, it was still hopeless odds, but it was better than standing alone. "There's something else," Rodriguez said, leading her to a secure briefing room. "We've been working on something, a last resort." The room contained Earth's highest military officials and several scientists Chen recognized from the Advanced Projects Division. Dr. Park, the lead physicist, looked exhausted but excited. "We've been experimenting with dimensional rifts," Park explained. "The technology we gained from the Centauri trade agreements opened new possibilities. We can't create stable wormholes yet, but we can create disruptions." Chen frowned. "Disruptions?" "Imagine space-time as a fabric," Park continued. "We can't cut it cleanly, but we can tangle it. Create areas where the laws of physics become unreliable. Shields fail, weapons misfire, navigation systems go haywire. It's a weapon of absolute last resort," Rodriguez added. "The effects are unpredictable and don't discriminate between friend and foe. But if we're facing annihilation anyway..." Chen understood. It was exactly the kind of insane, dangerous plan humans were known for. "How many of these devices do we have?" 3, Park said. "Deployed at the edge of the solar system. If the hegemony breaks through everything else, we can activate them as they approach Earth." "The ultimate middle finger," someone muttered, and despite everything, Chen smiled. The days passed in a blur of preparation. Allied ships began arriving, each species bringing their own technology and tactics. The Vega's harmonic weapons could shatter molecular bonds. The Hunters brought boarding craft and close combat specialists. The Rigelians contributed their superior shield technology. But it was the quiet ones who brought the most surprising gift. Their ships were like nothing Chen had ever seen, voids in space that bent light around them, only visible by the stars they occluded. But more than ships, they brought intelligence. The hegemony has conquered through fear and overwhelming force, their representative whispered into Chen's mind during a strategy meeting. But they have a weakness. They've never lost. They don't know how to adapt when their initial assault fails. You're suggesting we survive their first strike, Rodriguez said. Easier said than done. Not survive, the quiet one corrected. Make them pay for it. The hegemony calculates acceptable losses. If the losses become unacceptable, Chen understood. They might withdraw. Decide Earth isn't worth the cost. Perhaps, or perhaps they simply kill you all in rage. But dying on your feet is preferable to living on your knees, is it not? This is the human way. It was. For better or worse, it absolutely was. On the 6th day, long-range sensors detected the hegemony fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The numbers were worse than estimated, 1,500 ships, including dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Allied fleet. But humanity had one advantage the hegemony hadn't counted on. They expected Earth to follow standard tactical doctrine, to consolidate forces, protect key installations, fight a defensive battle. Instead, Admiral Rodriguez had deployed the fleet in something humans called a wolf pack formation. Small groups scattered throughout the system, ready to strike and fade, to harass and bleed the enemy rather than meet them head-on. All stations, this is Admiral Rodriguez. His voice carried across every human ship and installation. The enemy outnumbers us 30-1. By any reasonable measure, we should surrender. But we're humans. We don't do reasonable. Chen watched from the command center as humanity prepared to show the galaxy what that meant. The hegemony fleet moved through Earth's solar system like a plague of metal locusts, their formation perfect and intimidating. Their lead dreadnought, the Subjugator, was a monument to conquered civilizations, its hull decorated with trophies from 30 fallen worlds. Commander Threx stood on the Subjugator's bridge, his forearms clasped behind his back in a gesture of supreme confidence. The humans had gathered allies, yes, but the numbers were laughable. His tactical display showed the enemy fleet scattered throughout the system like scattered seeds. Pitiful, he rumbled to his second-in-command. They don't even have the courage to die together. What Threx didn't know was that humanity had spent 50 years studying galactic warfare, and they'd noticed something every other species missed. Everyone fought the same way. Large fleet engagements, massed firepower, straightforward tactics. It was civilized. It was predictable. It was not human. The first surprise came near Jupiter. A small human vessel, barely a patrol craft, accelerated directly toward the hegemony's left flank. Suicide run, Threx thought dismissively. He ordered a single destroyer to vaporize it. The human ship exploded before the destroyer's weapons could fire, but not from enemy action. It had detonated its own fusion core, and the explosion revealed its true cargo, thousands of metallic spheres that spread across space like a deadly cloud. Mines. The humans had turned their own ship into a delivery system for a minefield. The destroyer hit the field at full speed. Its shields flared and died as dozens of mines attached themselves to the hull before detonating. The destroyer tumbled, wounded but not destroyed, until a wolf pack of 5 human frigates emerged from Jupiter's sensor shadow and finished it off. First blood to Earth! The comm channels erupted with human cheers and something else, music. The humans were broadcasting ancient war songs across all frequencies. It should have been ridiculous. Instead, it sent an unexpected chill through crews who had never faced an enemy that celebrated combat. Threx snarled. Ignore the primitive's noise. All units, maintain formation and... His orders were cut short as space itself seemed to scream. The Vega had arrived. Their crystalline ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect harmony, and their first action wasn't to fire weapons, it was to sing. But this wasn't music as most species understood it. This was weaponized harmony, frequencies that resonated with the molecular structure of hegemony shields. Across the fleet, shield generators whined and sparked. They didn't fail entirely, but they wavered, fluctuated, became unreliable. "Adapt shield frequencies," Threx ordered, but his science officers were already shaking their heads. The Vega weren't using a single frequency. They were using thousands, shifting and modulating in patterns too complex to counter. That's when the hunters struck. Boarding pods launched from concealed positions among the asteroid belt, each one a tiny needle designed to punch through wavering shields. The hegemony had faced boarders before, but the hunters were different. They didn't try to capture ships or take prisoners. They had one goal: maximum damage in minimum time. On the battlecruiser, Inevitable Victory, hunter warriors carved through corridors like living nightmares, their plasma claws tearing through bulkheads and crew alike. They targeted critical systems: life support, navigation, weapons control, turning the ship into a drifting hulk in minutes before retreating to their pods and seeking new prey. But it was the human tactics that truly bewildered the hegemony. Human ships would attack, seemingly at random, from multiple vectors. They'd strike at supply ships, communication relays, any target of opportunity. When pursued, they'd run, not in shame, but to lead pursuers into ambushes or minefields. One human captain, commanding the converted cargo hauler Lucky Strike, broadcast on open channels as he piloted his ship directly into a hegemony formation. "This is Captain Chen. Different Chen, lots of us Chens, to any allied forces. I've got 12 nukes and a bad attitude. Might want to clear the area." The Lucky Strike's sacrifice took out 3 hegemony frigates and damaged a cruiser. The captain's last words, "Tell my kids I died standing up," were broadcast across the system. On Earth, those words were already becoming a rallying cry. Ambassador Chen watched from the command center as humanity's unconventional warfare began to take its toll. The hegemony had lost more ships in the first hour than in their last 5 conquests combined, but the math was still against them. Earth was trading 3 ships for every one of the enemies, and they had far fewer to trade. "Ambassador," an aide called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Altarian contingent." Chen had wondered when the Altarians would act. They'd sent 15 ships, not their best, but not their worst either. A token force to honor the memory of saved lives without fully committing to Earth's cause. The Altarian commander appeared on screen, her aquatic features unreadable. "Ambassador Chen, we have observed the battle. We have a question." "Ask," Chen said. "The human captain who just died, he had offspring?" "2 daughters," Chen confirmed, her throat tight. "Aged 7 and 9. The Altarian's fins fluttered rapidly. "He knew this? He knew his death would leave them orphaned?" "He knew. And still he chose this?" Chen's voice was steady. "He chose to give them a future, even if he couldn't share it." The Altarian commander was silent for a long moment. Then, "We understand now. Altarian fleet, all ships, engage at will, full commitment. These humans, they shame us with their courage." 15 became 50 as the Altarian commander revealed that their token force had been shadowed by a hidden fleet, waiting to see if humanity would break and run. Instead, they'd watched humans die for principles, for strangers, for futures they'd never see. The tide didn't turn, not yet, but it shifted. Near Mars, the Quiet Ones finally revealed their capabilities. Their void ships simply appeared inside a hegemony formation, bypassing shields and defensive lines through means no sensor could detect. They didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they projected fields of absolute darkness that swallowed 3 dreadnoughts whole. When the darkness lifted, the ships were gone, not destroyed, just absent. "What in the seven hells are those things?" Threx demanded, but his sensors could tell him nothing. The quiet ones were living up to their name, efficient and terrifying in their silence. The battle raged for hours. Earth's moon became a fortress, its mass drivers, originally built for launching cargo, repurposed to fling asteroids at significant fractions of light speed. The old International Space Station, crewed by volunteer medical personnel from dozens of Earth nations, worked frantically to save lives from any species, human or otherwise. But the moment that would be remembered, the moment that would echo through galactic history, came when the hegemony finally broke through to Earth itself. A squadron of heavy cruisers, led by the dreadnought Worldbreaker, pushed past the defensive lines and aimed for humanity's homeworld. Their orders were simple: bombard population centers, break the human spirit, force surrender. In their path stood a single ship, the UES Resilience, Earth's newest and most powerful vessel. One ship against 12. Captain Sarah Martinez knew the odds. Her crew knew the odds. The 217 souls aboard the Resilience had no illusions about their survival. "All hands," Martinez announced. "This is the captain. The hegemony wants to hurt our home, our families, our children. I don't know about you, but I take that personally." A chorus of agreement echoed across the ship. "We can't stop them all," Martinez continued. "But we can make them remember us. We can make them pay. And maybe, just maybe, we can buy our people time. All weapons free. Let's remind these bastards why humans are crazy enough to fight gods." The Resilience engaged at maximum range, her railguns and particle beams lighting space with defiance. Her fighter squadrons launched, each pilot knowing they had only enough fuel for a one-way trip. Her point defense systems blazed, creating a curtain of fire that even the hegemony had to respect. She fought like the ship's name promised, with resilience. Shields failing, she kept firing. Hull breached, she kept maneuvering. Engines damaged, she positioned herself directly in the path of the Worldbreaker's main weapon, the planet killer that could crack a continent. "You want Earth?" Martinez broadcast on open channels, her bridge burning around her. "Come through us!" the Worldbreaker fired. The Resilience took the full force of the planet killer beam, her hull absorbing and dispersing energy that could have devastated millions. The ship died in a blaze of light that was visible from Earth's surface, but she died fulfilling her purpose. And in her death, she gave Earth's last surprise time to deploy. Dr. Park watched his screens from a bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Three-dimensional rift generators, humanity's last-ditch doomsday weapons, were primed and ready. The hegemony fleet, confident after destroying the Resilience, was moving into optimal position. "Admiral Rodriguez," Park said over the secure channel, "we're ready." Rodriguez, commanding from the backup center on Luna, understood the weight of the decision. The rifts would devastate the hegemony fleet, but they'd also wreak havoc on local space. Trade routes would be unusable for decades. Earth itself might suffer gravitational anomalies. But the alternative was extinction. "Do it," Rodriguez ordered. Park entered the activation codes with steady hands. At 3 points around the solar system, devices no larger than shipping containers awakened. They didn't explode. Explosion was too simple a word for what they did. They folded space, twisted it, made it scream. The effects were immediate and horrifying. Near the first generator, a hegemony battle group simply ceased. Not destroyed, not vaporized. The space they occupied became somewhere else, and they went with it. Where, no one would ever know. The second generator created a zone where time flowed differently. Hegemony ships entering the area aged decades in seconds, their crews dying of old age before they could react. Their ships, designed to last centuries, crumbled to ancient dust. The third generator did something worse. It created a bubble where the laws of physics simply didn't agree. Matter became energy, became matter again in endless, agonizing cycles. The screams of dying ships echoed across subspace frequencies that shouldn't have been able to carry sound. Threx watched his fleet, his invincible, overwhelming fleet, being torn apart by weapons that violated every known law of warfare. This wasn't combat. It was madness given form. "All ships retreat!" He gave the order that no hegemony commander had ever given. "Emergency jump! All vessels now!" But the rifts were spreading, their effects unpredictable. Some ships made it to hyperspace. Others found that hyperspace itself had been contaminated, spitting them out in random locations across the galaxy. Still others simply vanished, their fate a mystery that would haunt hegemony databases forever. In the end, less than 300 hegemony ships escaped Earth's system. They'd entered with 1,500, confident in overwhelming victory. They left broken, traumatized, bearing stories of humans who weaponized the fundamental forces of reality rather than surrender. But the victory, such as it was, came at a cost. Earth's defensive fleet was devastated. 37 human ships survived out of over 100 engaged. Allied losses were lighter but still significant. The dimensional rifts had rendered large sections of the outer system unusable, their effects slowly spreading like cosmic cancer. And the resilience, Earth's brightest, newest hope, was gone, along with every soul aboard her. On Earth, as the remaining hegemony ships fled, there was no celebration. Humanity had survived, but the price had been measured in heroes. Across the planet, lights dimmed for a minute of silence. In orbit, the debris of fallen ships, human and alien alike, began the slow dance of orbital decay. Ambassador Chen stood in the command center, exhausted beyond measure. They'd won, if this could be called winning. Earth still stood, but for how long? The hegemony would remember this humiliation. They'd return, eventually, with better tactics and harder hearts. "Ambassador," her aide interrupted her dark thoughts. "We're receiving multiple transmissions. High priority." Chen straightened, expecting demands for explanation about the dimensional weapons or perhaps threats of retaliation. Instead, she found herself facing a view she'd never imagined. Ship after ship was dropping out of hyperspace around Earth. Not hegemony vessels, these bore the markings of species from across the galaxy. Centauri heavy cruisers, Rigelian carriers, even species that had remained neutral or actively opposed to helping Earth. The first message came from a Centauri admiral. "Earth Control, this is the CNV Redemption Leading Task Force Prometheus. We're here to help with your defense. Better late than never, as you humans say." More messages flooded in. The Merchants Guild, who never took sides, had sent supply ships. The Scholarium, observers who hadn't engaged in warfare for 1,000 years, offered their advanced medical frigates. Even the isolationist void dwellers had sent observers, which, for them, was equivalent to a declaration of alliance. "Why?" Chen asked when she managed to get the Centauri admiral on a private channel. "Why now?" The admiral, a being whose species prided itself on logical calculation, was quiet for a moment. "We watched your battle, Ambassador. We saw your Captain Martinez and the Resilience. One ship against 12, knowing death was certain, standing firm because it was right." He paused. "For 5,000 years, the hegemony has grown because species calculated that submission was logical. Today, you humans showed the galaxy something we'd forgotten, that some things are worth illogical choices. That courage can be stronger than fear. We made our choice based on logic," the Admiral continued. "The logic that says any species willing to die for strangers, willing to break the universe itself rather than kneel, is a species worth standing beside. Those who stand with Earth gain allies who never yield. You promised this. Today you proved it." Chen felt tears on her cheeks, exhaustion, grief, and now hope mixing in equal measure. The war wasn't over. The hegemony would regroup, reconsider, likely return with greater forces and darker purposes. The dimensional rifts would need to be contained somehow. Earth's fleet would need to be rebuilt. The fallen would need to be mourned. But Earth no longer stood alone. In showing the galaxy what humans would sacrifice for freedom, for friends, for the simple right to exist on their own terms, they'd awakened something in species who'd forgotten how to fight for anything beyond their own survival. The cost had been terrible. The future remained uncertain. But for today, Earth stood unbroken, and the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humans might be young, reckless, and impossibly stubborn, but those who stood with them would find allies who never, ever yielded. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, as historians were already calling it, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The dimensional rifts still twisted space around Earth's outer system, but human and alien scientists worked together to contain them, turning humanity's desperate weapon into a defensive barrier that made Earth nearly impossible to attack. Ambassador Chen stood in the newly constructed memorial station, built where the Resilience had made her final stand. The walls bore the names of every soul lost in the battle, human and alien alike, written in dozens of scripts and languages. She touched the panel where Captain Martinez's name gleamed, whispering a quiet thank you. "Ambassador," a melodious voice called. She turned to find the Altarian representative approaching, moving through the water-filled corridors designed to accommodate multiple species. "The emergency session is about to begin." Chen nodded. The hegemony had finally responded to their defeat, and their message had chilled every civilized world. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from over 200 species crowded the space, more than double the usual attendance. Even species that had been in hibernation for centuries had awakened to witness this moment. The hegemony's message played on the central display, their supreme commander addressing the galaxy with cold fury. "The humans have introduced chaos into our ordered galaxy," the figure intoned. "They have corrupted other species with their madness, their willingness to break the very laws of physics rather than accept their place. This cannot stand. Any species that continues to support Earth will be considered enemies of order itself. You have one solar rotation to withdraw your support or face the consequences." An ultimatum. Choose Earth or choose survival. The hall erupted in discussion as the message ended. Many representatives looked troubled. The hegemony controlled vital trade routes, essential resources. To stand against them meant not just military risk, but economic devastation. The Merchant Guild representative spoke first, their translator rendering their complex financial language into common speech. "The hegemony controls 40% of the galaxy's fuel production. Without access to their territories, many of our worlds will face energy crises within cycles." Others voiced similar concerns. Food supplies, medical resources, raw materials. The hegemony had spent millennia making themselves indispensable to galactic civilization. Chen's heart sank as she watched allies waver. She understood their fear. Earth had asked much of these species, and now the bill was coming due. Then something unexpected happened. A young human woman entered the hall, not a diplomat, but wearing the uniform of the Stellar Engineering Corps. She carried a datapad and looked nervous but determined. "Who are you?" the council moderator demanded. "Lieutenant Sarah Park," the woman replied, "daughter of Dr. James Park. I have something the council needs to see." Chen recognized the name. Dr. Park had died 2 weeks after the battle, radiation poisoning from working too closely with the damaged rift generators. His daughter had refused evacuation from Earth during the battle, choosing instead to help in the shipyards. "My father left this for me to share if the hegemony ever threatened our allies," Sarah continued. She activated her pad, and technical schematics filled the central display. Complete plans for dimensional rift technology. But more than that, plans for something new. The schematics evolved, showing modifications, improvements, applications no one had considered. Dimensional folding can be weaponized, yes, Sarah explained, but it can also create stable corridors through space, instant transportation between any 2 points, regardless of distance, no more dependency on established hyperspace routes, no more hegemony control over travel and trade. The implications hit the assembly like a shockwave. If this worked, it would revolutionize galactic civilization. The hegemony's stranglehold on commerce would be broken overnight. My father knew this day would come, Sarah continued. He said humans might be young, but we learn fast, and we share what we learn with our friends. She looked around the room. This technology is Earth's gift to any species that stands with us. Not sold, not traded, given freely. The Vega delegate harmonized in what their species considered laughter. The hegemony threatens to cut us off from trade routes, and Earth responds by making trade routes obsolete. How perfectly human. But Chen knew technology alone wouldn't be enough. The hegemony had ships, soldiers, the will to use them. Earth's grand gesture might change the future, but they had to survive the present first. That's when the quiet ones revealed their hand. Their representative materialized at the speaker's podium without warning, causing several delegates to jump. We have watched the hegemony for longer than most of you have existed, they whispered into every mind. We know their truth. Would you hear it? Silence greeted the question. The quiet ones never shared information without purpose. Show us, Chen said. Reality flickered, and suddenly the assembly was elsewhere. Or rather, elsewhen. They were witnessing a memory, pulled from the depths of quiet one observation. A planet burned beneath hegemony ships. Its people, insectoid, peaceful, advanced, pleaded for mercy. They offered surrender, subjugation, anything to save their children. The hegemony responded by increasing the bombardment. The sorrow of Kepler 442b, the quiet one narrated. Extinct now for 800 cycles. They submitted completely, gave the hegemony everything asked. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. The vision shifted. Another world, another species, another extinction despite total surrender. The hegemony doesn't conquer to rule, the quiet one continued. They conquer to erase. Each species that submits completely eventually faces the same fate. Extinction. Their resources absorbed, their uniqueness eliminated. Only those who maintain some defiance, some kernel of resistance, survive as vassals. More visions flowed. World after world, species after species. A pattern of genocide disguised as order. Earth showed you something the hegemony fears above all else, the quiet one concluded. The courage to resist, the willingness to die standing, the proof that their way is not the only way. They fear you not because you're strong, but because you're an example. The visions ended, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. Many representatives were reviewing their own historical records, finding gaps and inconsistencies that suddenly made terrible sense. The hunter delegate stood, all 4 meters of predatory grace. My people joined this alliance for the joy of battle, but this changes things. The hegemony aren't conquerors, they're exterminators, and they've made us accomplices through our fear. No more, the Altarian ambassador sang, her aquatic form pulsing with bioluminescent anger. We've hidden in our pools while others drowned. No more. One by one, representatives stood. Not just Earth's allies, but species that had remained neutral, even some that had previously supported the hegemony. The revelation of systematic genocide had broken something, or perhaps awakened something long dormant. The humans showed us courage, the Centauri admiral said. Now let us show them loyalty. The vote, when it came, was overwhelming. 173 species formally allied with Earth. 37 more declared neutrality, but offered humanitarian support. Only 12 sided with the hegemony, and most of those were already essentially puppet states. Earth had done more than survive. They'd sparked a revolution. The hegemony's response was swift and predictable. Their fleets mobilized, moving to crush this unprecedented alliance before it could solidify. But they'd made a critical error. They assumed other species would fight like they always had, with careful calculation and defensive strategies. They hadn't counted on Earth's influence. When hegemony fleets arrived at the Vega system, expecting to find crystalline ships arranged in traditional defensive formations, they instead found empty space. The Vega had learned from humanity. They'd gone mobile, turning their entire civilization into a nomadic fleet. Hit-and-run tactics with harmonic weapons left hegemony ships drifting, their crews driven mad by frequencies that bypassed all shielding. At Altair, the aquatic species had flooded space around their world with a dense field of water vapor, impossible by conventional physics. But they'd been working with human scientists. Hegemony ships found their sensors useless, their weapons refracted and scattered, while Altarian vessels moved through the artificial ocean like predators in their natural habitat. The hunters took human military doctrine and refined it to an art form. Wolf packs became shark swarms, boarding actions became surgical strikes. They didn't try to hold territory. They made the hegemony bleed for every parsec traveled. But the real shock came when the hegemony tried to retake Earth itself. Commander Threx had been given supreme command and the largest fleet in hegemony history, 3,000 ships, including new designs specifically created to counter human tactics. He emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol system, confident that overwhelming force would succeed where subtle strategy had failed. He found Earth transformed. The dimensional rifts had been harnessed, turned into a defensive network that made navigation treacherous for any ship without the proper frequency keys. Massive stations floated at Lagrange points, each one a fortress built with technology from a dozen species. The moon had become a weapons platform that could target anything in the system. And the ships. Earth's fleet had been rebuilt with alien technology and human innovation. Vessels that shouldn't exist by the laws of physics. Armed with weapons that bent reality as readily as they bent metal. "This is Fleet Admiral Chen," a familiar voice broadcasted. Ambassador Chen had taken a military commission, leading from the front as humans always did. "You're trespassing in Allied space. You have one chance to withdraw." Threx laughed. Even with their improvements, Earth's defenders numbered fewer than 500 ships. "You cannot stop us all." "No," Chen agreed, "but we don't have to." Space behind the hegemony fleet exploded with arriving ships. The Allied fleet had been waiting, hidden in hyperspace, for this moment. Thousands of vessels from scores of species, all here for one purpose: to stand with Earth. "You see, Commander," Chen continued, "humans have this saying, mess with one of us, mess with all of us. Our friends have adopted it. The Battle of Sol's Return, as it would be called, was less a battle and more a statement. The hegemony found themselves outnumbered for the first time in their history. Worse, they faced an enemy that fought with human unpredictability combined with alien precision. Quiet One ships phased in and out of reality, striking without warning. Vega harmonics shattered hegemony formations. Hunter boarding parties turned enemy ships against their own fleets. Altarian water shields absorbed energy weapons and redirected them. Centauri logic bombs corrupted hegemony computer systems, and the humans fought like humanity's survival depended on it, because it did. But more than that, they fought for their allies, throwing themselves into danger to protect Vega vessels, evacuating damaged hunter ships, standing between the hegemony and any allied force in trouble. "Why?" Threx demanded as his fleet crumbled around him. "Why do they fight so hard for aliens? Why do you fight so hard for them? He received his answer from an unexpected source. A small human child broadcasting from Earth's surface through her school's communication array. "Because they're our friends," she said simply, "and you don't let bullies hurt your friends." The pure innocence of that statement, transmitted across the battlefield, seemed to freeze both fleets for a moment. Then the Allied forces pressed their attack with renewed fury. They weren't just fighting against tyranny, they were fighting for the principle that a child could understand, but the hegemony never would. The end came swiftly. Threx's fleet, broken and demoralized, attempted to retreat, but they found their path blocked by something impossible: ships from their own subject species, flying free colors. The revolution Earth had sparked had spread. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under hegemony rule for centuries were rising up, inspired by humanity's example and enabled by rapidly spreading dimensional fold technology. "Surrender," Admiral Chen offered one last time. "It's over." Threx, the supreme commander of the most feared force in the galaxy, looked at his tactical display. He saw not just military defeat, but the end of an era. The hegemony's empire, built on fear and sustained by the myth of invincibility, was collapsing. He surrendered. The aftermath would take years to fully unfold. The hegemony's core worlds, stripped of their empire, had to learn to exist as equals rather than masters. Some adapted. Others resisted and faced the combined might of the new alliance. But the age of conquest through fear was over. Earth became the unofficial capital of the new galactic order, not through military might or political maneuvering, but because everyone wanted to be close to the species that had changed everything. Human universities filled with alien students studying human thinking. Earth's cities became melting pots of species, all trying to understand the magic that let humans look at impossible odds and say, "Let's do this." Ambassador Chen, now bearing the title of First Speaker of the Allied Council, stood once more at the memorial station. But this time she wasn't alone. Representatives from every Allied species stood with her, adding new names to the memorial, those who had fallen in the Second Battle of Seoul and the liberation wars that followed. "We gather not just to mourn, but to remember," Chen addressed the assembled crowd. "Every name on these walls represents someone who chose to stand rather than kneel, to fight rather than surrender, to believe that together we're stronger than fear." She paused, looking out at the stars visible through the station's transparent dome. "The galaxy told us we were too young, too reckless, too human to survive. Maybe they were right about the first two, but being human isn't about our species. It's about choosing courage over safety, friends over comfort, and never, ever giving up." The crowd, human and alien alike, erupted in cheers. Later, in a quiet moment, Chen found herself approached by the Quiet One representative. "We've watched many species rise and fall," they whispered into her mind. "We've seen empires built on strength crumble to dust. But Earth has built something different. Do you know what?" Chen shook her head. "Hope," the Quiet One said simply. "For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the galaxy has hope. Your species didn't just defeat the hegemony. You showed every species that they could be more than they believed possible. That's why those who stand with Earth gain allies who never yield, because you taught us all how to stand." As Chen watched the stars, ships from 100 worlds coming and going freely through dimensional gates that Earth had given freely, she smiled. Humanity had paid a terrible price to reach for the stars, but in reaching, they'd pulled the entire galaxy up with them. The message had spread from one end of inhabited space to the other, carried by grateful voices in 1,000 languages. Stand with Earth, and you stand with those who will never abandon you. Fight beside humanity, and discover what it means to truly live. And in classrooms across the galaxy, young beings of every species learned the lesson of the Battle of Seoul. Sometimes, the smallest voice saying no to tyranny can become a roar that reshapes the universe. Earth had wanted to explore the stars. Instead, they'd freed them. Those who stood with Earth had indeed gained allies who never yielded. But more than that, they'd gained something precious, the knowledge that in the darkest night, against the longest odds, there existed a species crazy enough to light a candle and call it a sun. And sometimes, that's all the light the universe needs.